Welcome back to Module 2 of the Indicator 13 Compliance Module series. In this module, we'll be talking about the requirements for age-appropriate transition assessments. As a reminder, if you have not already done so, please pause this module and go and access the pretest with your PPID number. The purpose of this series is to enhance practices for writing compliant, transition-based IEPs and to broaden the foundation for effective practices related to Indicator 13 of the State Performance Plan. In Module 1, we covered agency invitation and participation and student invitation to the IEP. During this module, we'll be covering CMCI, or Cyclical Monitoring for Continuous Improvement, file review item number 289, Age-Appropriate Transition Assessment. The later modules will cover the remaining components you see on this slide. So let's dig into the compliance language for file review question number 289. Is there evidence that the measurable post-secondary goal or goals were based on age-appropriate transition assessment? Let's take a little dig deeper into what that means. Age-appropriate transition assessment is an ongoing process, meaning it doesn't just happen once. We're doing it ongoing from year to year, and we're collecting information on the youth's needs, strengths, preferences, and interests as they relate to measurable post-secondary goals and the annual goals that are going to help facilitate attainment of post-secondary goals. Assessment is a process of gathering information to plan, evaluate, or make decisions. These assessments can be academic assessments, transition assessments, career and vocational assessments, behavior ratings, surveys, and they can include information from multiple people over multiple places and multiple points in time. And again, assessment should not look the same for all students.
This graphic shows us that assessment should be ongoing. First, we need to identify what are the interests, preference, and aptitudes for a student. As we look at that, then we need to set goals. Take a look at what are the skills that need to be built in order to achieve the post-secondary goals that are set based on this assessment. Each year, we take a look at the end of the year, but we would also be evaluating across the year, taking a look at, are we meeting these goals? Are we getting to where we need to go? Evaluating them, taking a look again, and identifying what are the needs, what are the interests, what are the preference, setting new goals. This absolutely has to happen by compliance annually. So every year at an IEP meeting, we're going to be looking at this process. These assessments should be done well ahead of that IEP meeting, but this ongoing process will then help us better identify what are the post-secondary goals and then what are the skills needed in order to meet those post-secondary goals. So here's what it is. It's absolutely ongoing and cumulative. We want to take a look across years at what is the information we have gathered. But it's not the same for every student. It must be individualized. It is based on a student's strengths and needs and interests, and finally, those post-secondary goals. And it is a process that not only increases the awareness a student has, but also the IEP team. This information is all used to develop appropriate post-secondary goals. And once we have those targets, then we'll be looking at what are the skills we need in order to be able to build that. But it shouldn't be something that's done just to be completed before an IEP meeting, just to fill out the forms. This is real data, real information that's needed to help inform the process. And it is not only the responsibility of the special education teacher. Remember that everyone who's included in that student's IEP team can be helping to deliver information that will better inform the team. Generally, we look at different types of assessments. One could be a formal assessment. This typically involves using a standardized test and a standardized procedure that results can be compared with other students of same age. And we do recommend that you do some formal assessment for students. Every year that you include something like that, that's a best practice. But thinking about this, comparing a student to other students who are around the same age, it's a great practice to get into and something that really does inform the process. And then we have informal assessments that these allow assessment of student performance over time. And that data can be collected from different people, from the youth themselves, from their families, from educators, agencies such as OVR who may be included, or maybe a student is in a work-based learning site and we'll get information from an employer. Maybe they're engaged in Special Olympics and we'll get information from that person. These different types of assessments really help us get a rounded picture of the student, gives us a better idea for that. So those things that we might get from the youth themselves would be formal assessments. We might interview a student to just ask them, what are they thinking? What's happening? What are they liking? What are they not liking? What classes do they enjoy? What classes do they not enjoy? There are surveys available, web-based assessments, questionnaires, directly observing a student doing something, and then a variety of transition checklists are available. From parents, we might get surveys or interviews or rating scales. They may be engaged in person-centered planning. We might get information from a formal planning tool. We might also take a look out at work sites using situational assessments, observations from employers or job coaches, job shadowing, and volunteering opportunities. All of this information comes together to give us a better picture of what a student, where a student might be headed, and what kind of skills are still needed. No matter how the assessment data is obtained, whether it's formal or informal, from a student, a parent, or someone else, whether it's observational or team-based, it's important and critical that that data is interpreted in the present ed level of an IEP. So what we don't want to see is just a listing of the outcome of these assessments. What we want to see is, how do you interpret that? What does the picture look like for that student? Just to remind you, assessment drives transition. And once a student is 13 turning 14, transition drives the IEP. Let's take a look at the Transition Assessment Planning Toolkit. This was specifically developed for students with significant disabilities and is meant to be an interactive toolkit. First, you'll take a look at the purpose of assessment, and then looking at transition assessment, we'll answer the questions what, who, how, when, and why. We encourage you to go there.
Now that we've had a great conversation about transition assessment, we're going to move on to our question and answer discussion. Our first question is, when updating transition assessments, do you have to use the same assessment annually and update it, or can we use a variety of transition assessments?
Transition assessments should be varied in addition to being administered each year. Assessments can be completed by the student, the parent, the caregiver, or another professional with knowledge about the student. But ideally, we're using different and varied assessments to answer different questions and provide information that we don't know about the student to help move us in our understanding and help the student move in their understanding towards completing and developing their post-secondary goals.
And you just mentioned about educators administering these assessments. How does an educator know that they've used enough assessments or the appropriate assessments?
You know, a lot of times, Matt, people want an answer. How many transition assessments do I have to have in the IEP meeting? 1, 2, 1 formal, 1 informal. There really isn't a cut and dried answer to that, except that there must be enough current age-appropriate assessment to assist the IEP team in creating or updating post-secondary goals each year. If there are still unanswered questions, that it's likely that more data would be helpful To answer those questions, then you need more assessments. Year to year, assessments should build on each other. And then within an IEP year, you want to make sure that you're answering the questions that are unanswered based on the data we have. This will help a youth and their family create a focus for the future that will determine what are the skills that are still needed for future success.
Great, that's super helpful. And what should we do when a student wants to go into what might be considered an unrealistic career? Like a student wanting to play in the NFL, but they don't currently play sports.
Updated transition assessments and the data collected through transition assessments are really the best tools to help demonstrate how a career goal may be unrealistic. In addition, through the transition exploration process, students should be made aware of the requirements to enter into a profession, including education requirements, physical requirements, exam requirements, the time required, etc. And they should be also provided with opportunities to explore related careers. It may not be that a student is interested in being in the NFL necessarily. It might be that they want to make the money that an NFL player makes. Then we can guide them to careers that an NFL player makes. It may also be that they really love football, but they don't have the athletic or physical capabilities to play in the NFL, but would make an excellent statistician or coach or broadcaster. There are many ways to be engaged in a passion that aren't maybe around that. And so that assessment process can help us to refine what is it about that they think they're interested in, and how can we guide them through experiential learning opportunities and teaching to help find a career that's going to best meet their skills and interests.
Great. And one final question. What can or should transition assessment look like for learning support students who are receiving minimal supports?
Well, Matt, all students should have access to ample transition assessments to assist that youth and the IEP team as they plan for future needs. So it really doesn't matter. It's not disability specific. Initially, assessment might be broader. And as time goes on, assessment should help that youth focus in on more specific steps to meet with success in post-secondary goals. Also, folks should remember that there may be assessment that is collected as part of school-wide programs that should be included in the big picture.
Great. So now that we've covered both some really important topics today related to transition assessment and our question and answer, we're going to wrap things up.
For more information, you could reach out to your IU transition consultant or a patent transition consultant using the secondary transition directory located on the patent website. And finally, don't forget to take your post test. You'll need your PPID number.